So we spoke today about purpose and the intrinsic and extrinsic motivations and rewards therein. So one of the interesting diagrams I've come across is a Venn diagram of purpose, which has 4 different aspects. One of which would be finding something to do that you love to do. This can be a personal passion. This does not have to be something necessarily that is a vocation or profession. One of the others is something you are good at. Now, that is something you are skillful with. How good are you? That can be, I'm the best in my family. That can be, I'm the best in the state. That can be, I'm a world champion. Something you are good at. Something that has that kind of skill. Now, when we start to incorporate them into work, this would be something you are paid for, something that other people value, something that provides for you. Being paid is not necessarily economical. This can be being paid in favors, paid in emotional favors, paid in experience, paid in exposure, paid in all kinds of experiential things like that. The last of which would be something that the world needs. Now, this is a kind of dharmic duty. This can be a service to the world. This can be the environment around you or the world at large. We can divide this into 2 axes, one of which would be the intrinsic motivations. The intrinsic motivations being something you love or something you are good at. Those are things within the self. Those are things you can do for your self-confidence, for your self-esteem, for your own exertion and things like that. The others being the world needs or something you are paid for by others. That can be intrapersonal things or employers, even religion. That would be an extrinsic motivation. The other 2 axes on these that I would like to explore as well would be that of the skillful acumen. So something you are good at. How good are you? That is a quantifiable metric. Are you the best in your family? Are you the fastest person on your block? Are you the best in the world at something? And paid for as well. Is it something worth a lot of money? Is it something not worth as much money to other people? Is it enough to supply for your way of living, for your food, for your housing, to provide for your family that you are able to do? The other axis of this, of course, would be something I would call a fulfillment of satisfaction. This fulfills services. The things that you love fulfill yourself. The satisfaction that you get satisfies needs, services called by the rest of the world and the people around you. Now, that kind of satisfaction may be fulfilling the self. It may be satisfying religious doctrine. That may be satisfying the needs of those around you or the world at large. This particular diagram is known as the Venn diagram of purpose. It was coined in 2012 by a Spanish astrologist by the name of Andres Zuzunaga. Andres Zuzunaga was the one that pioneered this, and it also may be sometimes seen as the Ikigai Venn diagram. Now, Ikigai is a Japanese concept meaning a worthwhile life, things that make life worth living. That attribution is slightly askew and not entirely accurate. Now, the origination of this was Andres Zuzunaga, who published it in a psychology book for finding purpose. Now, a lot of these things, something you love, something you are good at, something you are paid for, and something that the world needs, do not need to be one singular action. They do not need to be the thing you do for work. You may fulfill enough of a job that pays for all of your extracurricular activities to be able to go up to the mountains and ski and hike every weekend, to be able to provide for your family, to be able to not have to worry about money and the hierarchy of needs in caring for yourself. Things that you love may not be things that you are good at either. Things that you love may be doing art for yourself, meditating for yourself, skateboarding just for yourself, any kind of sportive activities, any kind of exertions like that are good for you and intrinsic internal to the self. Things that you are good at may be measured by other people. They may be measured by yourself. This starts to get into intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. Sometimes we may be going to work for a paycheck to be able to be recompensed for services that we do, and then we find out that we are good at it. Or we find out that it is something we do love, that we have a passion for. You may be going down to a dog shelter on the weekends and then finding out that they have a need, and that's something you would be able to fulfill by volunteering there once a week or once a month, stuff like that. A lot of these explorations and experimenting into things unfamiliar with you yield in not just intrinsic and extrinsic motivations, but the rewards therein. A lot of times when we choose not to do something for free, we may get paid emotionally, experientially with all kinds of explorative experimentations and things like that, that we find things we are good at, we find things we love, we find things that we can get paid for that have value, and we can find these things that the world needs. One thing as well that I like to touch on is the interplay and necessity of the intrinsic and extrinsic motivations as a pairing. Now, if we have an absent intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, this is kind of like a yin-yang that is not going anywhere. If you don't have an intrinsic or extrinsic motivation, it's probably not getting done. Now, if we just have one of them, if we have an intrinsic motivation, we probably will be able to get that wheel turning, even in the absence of an extrinsic motivation. And this may not be the most beneficial because sometimes we don't feel the vibe today. We don't have the inspiration. We don't have the calling. We don't have that internal motivation. And in that, the wheel might not turn as easily. Similarly, if we only have an extrinsic motivation that is present, but absent an intrinsic motivation, we may go to work just to get a paycheck. We may go to school just for the education and do the assignments just for a grade. Those things are all extrinsic and they can get the wheel turning. But absent the intrinsic motivation, we may not have that serendipity, that inspiration, that passion to be able to fulfill it when we don't have the external motivators. Now, the beauty of it is when we find an intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Those are subjective, and we can find motivations and rewards in anything and everything we do. When one is absent, when we're not feeling the vibe today, the other will be able to keep the wheel turning. This adds torque, it adds speed, it adds efficacy to our motivations and our rewards that we do. Another great way I like envisioning this is a horse running because it loves to run, a horse running because it's good at it. They are evolutionarily designed to sprint, are intrinsic motivations. A horse just running in that direction is perfectly fine to do so. Now, when we start including extrinsic motivations, that can be a carrot or a stick. A carrot would be something that, okay, I'm going towards that direction. A horse is running in that direction to be able to get that reward. An extrinsic motivator as well would be a riding crop, a stick to keep it from going there. Both of those are external, outside the horse's own motivations, and both of those are extrinsic motivations. Now let's get into the psychology of this a little bit. We have positive and negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement is the absence of an external stimulus. So an absence of a carrot, the horse may get hungry. That is a negative reinforcement that it will pursue an extrinsic positive reinforcement of having the carrot to eat. Very conversely as well, the absence of being hit with the riding crop have a negative reinforcement on, hey, I don't like getting hit with a stick. Positive reinforcement is the introduction of that riding crop, of that external stimulus, the extrinsic motivation that is driving the horse from a certain direction. So using these searches for purpose, we have this interplay between our motivations and our rewards. We have this search for acumen, skills that we can offer the world. We have this satisfaction that we carry with ourselves, either satisfying others externalized from ourselves or satisfying our own needs and desires. When we can do the alchemy, when we can have that subjective thing of finding the intrinsic and extrinsic motivations within everything, when we can find the carrot and the stick in every direction we're going, hey, I'm going towards this, I'm going away from this. That is the beauty where you will find momentum and you will be able to find motivations and rewards in any direction you go.